In the south of France, three women in their 40s decide to make the most of their vacation by having flings with three young sailing instructors. One sunny morning, Elise, Sonia, and Cecile embark on a road trip to the south of France. The driver answers a call from her daughter, Nina, and promises she'll be home in 3 weeks. After the call, the nervous Sonia says the woman shouldn't use her earphones while driving, so Elise tells her to loosen up because they're on vacation. However, Cecile reminds her friends that they have to pack up the vacation home first because the buyers are coming back for a follow-up visit. Moments later, Sonia mentions that she's heading to Ibiza in a few days because Pascal told her to come. When her pals express their disappointment, the woman explains that the man's finally leaving his wife to be with her. Suddenly, the driver behind them flashes the headlights, pressuring Elise to let him pass. Annoyed, she tells Sonia to take the wheel, and then she lifts her shirt to flash the men in the other vehicle. However, they hear police sirens and disappointingly realize that they have to pull over. In the taxi, Elise can't believe her license got confiscated, so Cecile tells her it's alright because she can take another test in 6 months. Inside the vacation home, Cecile sadly points out how the space still smells like her late husband. To their surprise, they find a pelican in one of the bedrooms, and the billowing curtains imply that it must have gotten in through the open window. The next day, they delegate the tasks of clearing each room and packing the items in boxes. While her friends are assembling the boxes, Sonia's busy texting Pascal. Because the women don't know how to wrangle the wild animal, they leave it on the bed while they continue packing. One evening, Elise tells Cecile that she finished setting up her profile on an online dating app because she needs to put herself out there. Even though the woman just wants to finish packing as soon as possible, her friends think they should take a break and go sailing tomorrow. The next morning, Elise and Sonia enjoy their day in the water by riding jet skis. Suddenly, they pass by a children's sailing class taught by Paul and Julien. Because the women didn't seem to notice them, the men push one of their students into the water and pretend he's drowning. Then, Paul loudly announces what's happening, removes his shirt, and jumps in to save the child. So, the concerned friends ride their jet skis over and ask if everything's alright. Paul claims it was their fault that the kid fell in the water and flirtily offers to teach them how to drive properly. However, the women politely decline their offer and return to Cecile's sailboat. At the beach, the widow sees her old acquaintance, Christine, whom she says is nice but would prefer not to talk to because she knows she'll want to discuss her late husband. Suddenly, they spot Thomas jogging, and the older woman calls him over and says he's renting out one of her homes. She introduces the man to the group and reminds him that she's taking him to the club later tonight. That evening, Cecile stays home crying in bed while her pals line up outside the club. The blonde hostess, Louise, refuses them entry, subtly hinting that they're too old to be there. When they're about to leave, they run into Paul and Julien and their friend, Markus. So the men talk to Louise and explain that the women are their companions and to let them in. She grabs Julien and says they should meet up after her shift, but he indifferently responds that he'll think about it. Inside, the women offer to pay for their drinks after they mention how they can't afford the expensive options at the bar. On the dance floor, Louise can't believe the men are still hanging out with the older ladies, so she tries to intimidate them. After she walks away, Sonia asks Julien if the hostess is his girlfriend, so he explains that they hooked up at a party once and now the woman won't leave him alone. Later that night, Paul suggests they head to the after party, but the women think they should head home. Suddenly, he grabs Elise and kisses her, so his friends tell him to let the pair leave if they want to. When they arrive at the house, they find Cecile sleeping on the floor surrounded by multiple jigsaw puzzles. The next day, Paul and Julien spy on the friends as they play volleyball on the beach with Thomas. Later, the man shares that he's been separated from his ex-wife for 3 years and he has a 6-year-old son. At the house, Thomas tells Cecile that if the buyers ever back out, he'd be interested in purchasing it. Moments later, Paul, Julien, and Markus drop by, making Sonia and Elise wonder if they gave them their address last night. The widow recognizes Markus, an old family friend, and says he's all grown up. The men claim that the ladies invited them over for dinner last night, explaining why they're there. The group meets Thomas and mentions that his son son takes their sailing classes, and the man takes a subtle disrespectful jab at the nature of their jobs. When the guest brings out the booze they brought, the older man rudely says that they'll eventually grow out of their partying phase once they start making real money. Because he continues insulting the other men, Elise diffuses the situation by walking him out and mentioning how she doesn't like his condescension. In the kitchen, Cecile says it's strange having Markus there because he used to babysit her kids, but Elise swears she doesn't remember inviting them last night. During dinner, Julien says he's in law school, Markus says he's studying to become an engineer, and Paul says he's taking a break before his second year in medical school. Overwhelmed by the men's crass jokes regarding hooking up with women, Cecile leaves the table and heads inside the house. In the kitchen, she leaves her kids a voicemail message when her old babysitter walks in. He says it's weird being in the house and wonders if he'd even recognize the children because it's been a long time since they last saw each other. She agrees that they've grown a lot since then, just like he has. In the living room, Sonia and Elise dance with Paul, and they tease him when he doesn't know the older song that's playing. Meanwhile, the widow shows Markus the wall in the backyard that she's always wanted to tear down so they could have direct access to the garden. Concurrently, Sonia and Julien awkwardly sit on the couch while watching the other pair dancing and flirting. Then she takes out her phone and shows the man a musical artist that she is currently managing. She spots a woman's name tattooed on his wrist and asks if it's an ex-girlfriend. He says it's his mother's name and jokingly wonders if she asked about it because she felt jealous. Suddenly, the woman receives a voice message from Pascal, so she moves to the terrace to listen to it. Moments later, the distraught Sonia asks them to translate the message. Julien says it's a lewd statement he was probably screaming while making love to another woman, and he accidentally sent the recording. Furious, Cecile says she's tired of Pascal treating her friend this way, and she suggests they go out for ice cream. Later, the widow breaks off the lock on a freezer by the road and steals a tub of ice cream, much to the group's delight. Because Julien's feeling ill, the men decide to call it a night while the women head to the beach for a swim. However, when they return to the car, they realize the trunk's stuck and they can't get their clothes or keys. So the clothless ladies get in the vehicle through the sunroof and use random objects to cover their bodies until help comes in the morning. The next day, Thomas happens upon the car during his jog and they ask him for help. While trying to open the trunk, he apologizes for his behavior last night but adds that it's only because he doesn't have patience for immature simpletons. So Elise states that he always equates maturity with age and social class, and that Paul and his friends are more respectful than him. Later, Sonia helps the woman take provocative pictures to send to Paul. Suddenly, a distraught Cecile enters the room and says that she lost her late husband's bracelet last night. After searching through the entire house to no avail, the widow blames the loss on Elise for inviting the men over, and Sonia for her affair with Pascal that led to them acting crazy last night. She says she'd like them to leave as soon as possible because it seems like the only reason they came was to find guys to sleep with. In the living room, they continue silently filling more boxes, and Elise says she'll head upstairs to pack her bag. However, the widow apologizes and says she didn't mean what she said earlier and that she'd like them to stay. While Cecile and Sonia share a reconciliatory hug, Elise receives a provocative picture from Paul and says she'll take a shower. That night, she sneaks out of the house to see the man and they make love. The next day, Paul tells his buddies about sleeping with Elise last night, and he mentions how it wasn't that different from making love to someone their age. Then, he tells Julien that they should hurry up and make a move on Sonia before it's too late. At a beachside bar, Christine joins the group and the owner, Michel, says they ran out of ice cream because someone broke their freezer the other night. Then, he shares that he found a bracelet in the freezer and believes it belonged to the vandal. The group keeps mum while Michel says that he plans on selling the item to fix his equipment, much to Cecile's dismay. That afternoon, Julien buys tickets for the ladies and Sonia kisses him on the cheek to show her gratitude. Suddenly, Louise and her friend challenge the woman to a horse race and they take her up on it. During the competition, the blonde tries to kick Sonia, so the woman reiterates by knocking her off the horse. Eventually, the three friends win the race, and Markus loudly cheers for Cecile. In front of the crowd, she jumps into his arms and he congratulates her. At the parking lot, they find the car missing. So Sonia says Elise and Paul left for the house 10 minutes ago. So the rest of the group hangs out at the men's apartment. And Markus apologizes since he would have invited them to his parents' place, but it's rented out. Since it's getting late, the ladies say their goodbyes and Sonia mentions that she's heading to Spain tomorrow. To Julien's surprise, he tries to kiss the woman, but she awkwardly avoids the smooch. Meanwhile, Paul and Elise play a game of Yes Master in the bedroom before making love. When they arrive at the house, the widow admonishes her friend for doing whatever Pascal tells her, so the latter asks her not to judge too harshly. They hear the pair doing the deed upstairs, so Cecile says she'll stay downstairs. In the bedroom, Sonia packs her bags when Julien suddenly appears on the balcony. He says he wanted to see her one last time before she leaves. Then, the woman receives a message from Pascal telling her that their trip is cancelled because he has to return to Paris. Dismayed, she cries in bed, prompting the man to comfort her. After she calms down, she kisses Julien and they finally make love. However, he stops midway and apologizes for his poor performance, revealing that he relieved himself before coming over. He asks if she'd like him to leave, but she tells him to stay and they cuddle in bed. Meanwhile, Cecile answers a call from her daughter who informs her that her teen brother might get kicked out of camp because he slept with a counselor. However, due to her inebriation, the mother says there's nothing wrong with what her son did. In the bathroom, Paul asks if he's the best lovemaking partner Elise has ever had. To his disappointment, the woman says although he was good, he still has much to learn. The next day, Julien accidentally answers Pascal's call, but instead of being angry, Sonia thinks it's great that the man knows she slept with someone else last night. Later, Paul crudely recounts the events last night, so Julien tells them to be more respectful regarding the way he talks about the ladies. At the beach, Cecile asks her friends if they don't find it weird that they're sleeping with men much younger than they are. So Elise says that it's a double standard since people never judge men who have relationships with women half their age. Sonia shares that she's still a little shaken from Pascal's message, so her pals warn her that she better not give him the time of day ever again. Later, Elise and Sonia swim and frolic in the water with their lovers. Then Markus joins the widow on the beach and sits next to her. When their legs touch, the woman moves away and says that her friends fooling around with the sailing instructors is strange. She points out that they look like the men's mothers, so he clarifies that it wouldn't matter since he isn't her son and she's much more attractive than his mother. He adds that she doesn't have to worry since nothing's going on between them, and she agrees. While lying on the sand, Elise sees Paul checking out two women passing by. When he goes back to the water, one of the woman's clients recognizes her and assumes that the sailing instructor was her son. Later, she tells Paul that she dreams of going back to school to study family rights because she's sick of being a tax lawyer. So he encourages her to give it a shot since it's never too late and it'll be easy for her to find new clients because of how pretty she is. Soon, the group rides a carousel and Sonia ignores multiple calls from Pascal. For the next few days, the couples enjoy the rest of their vacation. Meanwhile, Markus helps Cecile pack the last of the remaining items in the house. One afternoon, the heartbroken Louise sees Julien and Sonia kissing. Days later, Elise picks up her daughter Nina from the train station because her ex-husband had a change of plans. The next day, the child participates in sailing classes and helps Paul lift a boat. Then, Sonia shares that she needs to end things with Julien soon because he's starting to develop feelings. However, instead of ending the fling, she makes love with a sailing instructor in the shed. After the deed, the woman mentions that she isn't using contraception, so Julien says that if she ever gets pregnant, he'd be happy to be there for the baby. That afternoon, Elise and Sonia see the necklace around Cecile's neck and she says it was a gift from Markus. When she says she's heading out to do some shopping, Markus asks to accompany her. At the boardwalk, the pair playfully flirt while trying on hats and sunglasses. Suddenly, Christine appears and hands the woman the bracelet, which she was able to take from Michelle discreetly. Meanwhile, Elise tells Paul that he can come visit when he's back in Paris after his summer job ends, but he responds indifferently. Suddenly, he receives a text message and smiles as he reads it. The woman asks if he wants to hang out tonight, but he says he'll probably stay at home. Later, Sonia finds her friend crying in the kitchen and asks her what's wrong, so the woman admits that she fell in love with a sailing instructor and realized it's never going to work. The next day, the two women bring the widow breakfast in bed because they'd like her to relax while they organize a party. In town, they spot Thomas on a date with Louise, and Elise calls him a hypocrite. The woman asks the men where Paul is, and Julien says he's busy with a private lesson at the moment. Later, Markus sees Cecile stressing about the party and suggests he take her out on a boat to relax. Suddenly, they hear a commotion outside and they see Louise pouring trash on the car. Sonia insists that she didn't steal her boyfriend and she's merely imagining these things, but the woman relieves herself through the sunroof. In the bathroom, the friends can't believe the woman's behavior, so Nina reminds them that they probably acted similarly when they were in their 20s. During the party, the disappointed Elise sees Paul gyrating with another woman. Moments later, Julien tells Sonia that he's glad she dumped Pascal. However, the woman clarifies that although she did end the relationship, she didn't do it for him. Even though he doesn't care about their age difference, she says it'll always be an issue for her. Heartbroken, the man gently pushes her away and leaves. Concurrently, Paul finds the despondent Elise and they finally address the nature of their relationship. He acknowledges that although he didn't want to hurt the woman, he already has. He adds that a serious relationship will never work and deep down she knows this to be true. So they share one final hug. Later, Elise overhears Christine admonishing a man for his rude comment about Cecile and Markus. Meanwhile, Sonia finds Julien standing on the edge of the cliff, so she calmly convinces him to get down so they can talk. Hours later, Cecile and Markus use a sledgehammer to tear down the wall in the backyard. During breakfast, the widow says she's changed her mind about selling the house. Then, Nina asks Markus which room he slept in last night, and the friends share a knowing laugh, implying that he and Cecile made love. Moments later, they watch the pelican finally exit the bedroom, and the widow waves at the bird as it flies away.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.